Good evening.
Good evening.
I, Ruchika Jain, on behalf of High Commission of India, welcome you all on this day today, when we would be remembering and observing the birth anniversary of Gurudev, Rabindranath Tagore. It's a special occasion for us, as his name, Rabindranath Tagore's name, is etched in golden letters for his contribution, his immense contribution in Indian literature, in Indian political movement, in India's freedom struggle in unparalleled way. So to begin the session today, I would first request our Deputy High Commissioner, Shri Suneet Mehta, to say a few words.
Thank you, Ruchika. Professor Raghbendra Jha, Emeritus Professor from ANU, distinguished members in the audience, ladies and gentlemen, Namaskar. I heartily welcome you all for attending today's talk by eminent Professor Raghbendra Jha to mark the 161st birth anniversary of Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore. Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore, one of India's greatest sons, is remembered for his path-breaking vision as an educationist and for his belief in the essential oneness of humanity. Gurudev Tagore was a Renaissance man, a versatile genius, and such men are rarely found in history. He was not just a poet and author, but also a composer, painter, philosopher, and educationist. He was a perfect ambassador of our country at a time when little was known about India and the outside world. Throughout his life, he was fascinated by the idea of interaction between civilizations through the exchange of knowledge about their cultures and literature, which reflect the universal values of humanity. In a world fettered by race, creed, and color, Rabindranath Tagore promoted internationalism for a new world order based on diversity, open-mindedness, and coexistence. He traveled far and wide preaching the religion of truth and harmony and of love and compassion. Visionaries like Gurudev Tagore has made us realize that literature, histories, and cultures represent common ideals of humanity that transcend national limits. His message was resonated well in the Western world when he was awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1913 for his work on Gitanjali, and was the first non-European to receive it. Beyond being a personal accomplishment, it was a recognition of a new Indian identity in colonial India. Tagore's Jana Gana Man, originally composed as Bharato Bhagya Vidhata, was adopted as the national anthem of India in 1950. In Bengal, Rabindra Sangeet remains incredibly popular and influential. Besides his literary achievements, he established the Vishwa Bharati University, a renowned university globally which challenged conventional education. He influenced youth with his patriotic songs during the freedom movement. Ladies and gentlemen, I have no hesitation in stating that the ideas of truth, openness, dialogue espoused by Gurudev Tagore provide the best way forward for the world today. Today, when India is celebrating Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, commemorating 75 years of independence, cultural diplomacy is the key instrument to promote and propagate India's rich civilizational and cultural heritage and reinforce people-to-people contacts transcending political boundaries. Gurudev Tagore, being a lifelong champion of the philosophy of universalism, was one of the foremost cultural ambassadors of India. Our Prime Minister, Shri Narendra Modi, said that Nobel laureate Rabindranath Tagore's vision is the essence of Atmanirbhar Bharat, or a self-reliant India. As we strive to preserve our distinct identities as individuals, groups, and communities and nations, it's important that we recognize and celebrate our commonalities. I quote these celebrated lines from the Gitanjali, where the mind is without fear and the head is held high, where knowledge is free, where the world has not broken up into fragments by narrow domestic walls, where the words come out from the depths of truth, where tireless striving stretches its arms towards perfection, where the clear stream of reason has not lost its way into the dreary desert sands of dead habit, where the mind is led forward by thee into ever-widening thought and action, into that heaven of freedom, my Father, let my country awake. I look forward to the talk by Professor Jha. Thank you. Jai Hind.
Thank you, Suneet, for making us all remember these amazing words we all have been growing up listening to, learning them, and being inspired to carry on these ideals shown by our forefathers. Today, we have amongst us Professor Raghbendra Jha, who has continued always to strike us by awe with his deep research. Whenever we have invited him to speak or deliver a talk on any topic, I'm always inspired by the amount of research he's conducted in whatever he speaks and brings to us always some new facts and issues which we had not probably thought over earlier. Professor Raghbendra Jha is Emeritus Professor of Economics in Ardent Gordon Department of Economics at the Crawford School of Public Policy. He is a fellow of the World Innovation Foundation and specializes in development economics, macroeconomics, and public economics. Today, he would be speaking on the political and the historical context of Rabindranath Tagore's work. So now I invite Professor Jha to enlighten the gathering with what we have so far not come across. Professor Jha.
Namaste to everybody. Can everybody see me and hear me? Is everything okay? All right. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for that warm introduction. And it's always good to be in the High Commission, if not physically, then virtually. I would like to thank the High Commission for inviting me to present this little talk on Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore. What I would do is I'll just share a screen. I've got some talking points which I would like you to go through. That would. So can you see the screen, everybody? Okay, yeah, fantastic. Yeah, so this is a tribute to Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore. And what I will do here is to first present the, let me just give you a sense of the direction of my talk so that we are clear. So these are the sections of the presentation today. The first, I'll give a slight historical background, not a very long one, a small historical background. Then, I will talk about his family background. And the third, I will talk about political activity, in particular the 1905 partition of Bengal. I'll talk a little bit about Gurudev's work, and then we will conclude. So that's the structure of the presentation today. So the first thing to note is the background under which, against which all this activity was going on. The Gurudev was working and India was functioning. The first thing to note is that in the 18th century, just a century before Gurudev came onto the scene, Indian textiles had been reigning in the world. I mean, Daniel Defoe, the author of Robinson Crusoe, which a novel all of you must have read, once wrote that the Indian textiles are everywhere in every British household, from the living room to the bedroom to the hall. Everywhere, Indian textiles were there, and as a consequence of that, Britain, with her industrial revolution, could not sell her textiles in India, and in fact, her textiles would not grow very fast. So they imposed very heavy tariffs, 40% to 400% on Indian tariffs. And in the 18th century, there was a collapse of Indian industry, Indian textiles. So that's the economic background to what was happening at that time. In 1757 was the Battle of Plassey. In 1764, there was the Battle of Buxar, which the British also won, apart from the Battle of Plassey. And in 1765, there was a consolidation of Bengal to include present-day West Bengal, Bihar, Odisha, Bangladesh, and Assam. So the Bengal of 1765 was a huge, huge area, and its population had grown up to about 80 million by the beginning of the 19th century, which is a huge amount. Given those days, please don't think of India as being always being overpopulated. There were times when India had a decline in population, and people and the population of the country was very small. In 1874, Assam was sliced away from Bengal and put under a chief commissioner. So the measures to reduce the size of Bengal started way back in 1874. So let's talk a little bit about Gurudev's family background. His ancestor, Panchanand Thakur, was the first one to come to Bengal, to Calcutta. He came from Kannauj in UP. And in fact, it's important to realize that a lot of Bengali names have their origins somewhere in UP, in Kannauj and some other places. For example, Bandyopadhyay is a distortion of one distortion of Upadhyay. So is Gangopadhyay, so is Chattopadhyay, and so on. And later on, during British rule, they became Banerjee and Chatterjee and Ganguly and so on. So Panchanand Thakur, an ancestor of Rabindranath, came to Calcutta. And Rabindranath was the 14th and last child of Devendra and Sharda Thakur. So the 14th and last child. So so his family was very, very large. Yet, ironically, he was a very lonely person all his life. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes. He was born on 7 May 1861. And his mother was always keeping indifferent health. So he was raised essentially by servants in the household. And that was a very difficult period. There are lots of stories about how, if you read the literature on Rabindranath, you will find lots of stories about how he was very disturbed by the way he used to be treated by the servants. Basically, they used to keep him, he was a very playful child, and they used to keep him under strict control, and they used to confine him to a small area and not let him go out, and so on and so forth. So these were some of the vivid incidents in his childhood. However, early in his childhood, he was introduced to the Gayatri Mantra and by his father. And he drew great inspiration from the Gayatri Mantra. In fact, Gayatri Mantra became a part of the curriculum. Chanting the Gayatri Mantra became a part of the curriculum of Shanti Niketan, later Vishwa Bharati. And it continues even now. Reciting the Gayatri Mantra is a very important part of the curriculum in Vishwa Bharati. He had many problems with schooling. He drifted from one school to another, and mostly this was because of the strict discipline that schools used to impose. Victorian schools in India used to impose on children. He was not made out for that. So he had very little formal education in schools. Though he did go to school, but he just drifted from one school to another and did not really complete anything substantial. Then came his first of many tragedies in his life. He lost his mother at the tender age of 13. So his mother was always sick. Even after his birth, his mother was ill. So his mother died when he was only 13 years old. So, so in his early travels, he went to Gujarat first, and then to Bombay, and then to London. And his first major patriotic poem he was writing as a child in various magazines in Bengal, but his first patriotic poem was one mocking the new viceroy or governor general in January 1877. It's Lord Lutyens. And he wrote a poem mocking him, mocking his appointment as the new viceroy or governor general. And that made him an overnight star. This was the first poem that made him a star. So his first poem that really made him a star was a patriotic one, which we should be clear about that. So so in London, he went to London with an elder brother, and the elder brother was working in some other town, and Rabindranath was sent to London, and he was asked to complete a formal education for the law degree in London. However, he was very lonely, sitting in an alien country, and he was not keeping well also. So 2 years later, his family decided to call him back to Calcutta. Okay, so he returned to Calcutta without completing his law education, and when back in Calcutta, he developed very affectionate ties with one of his elder brothers. His name was Jatindranath, and his wife Kadambari. So his brother and his sister-in-law became very close to Rabindranath. And a few months after this, the development of this deep relationship between the two, I think this relationship has been immortalized in a film also. It's a very, very beautiful episode in Rabindranath's life. But a few months after the development of this very affectionate relationship, Rabindranath was married to Bhavatarani, a lady by the name of Bhavatarani, whose name was changed to Mrinalini after marriage. So Mrinalini was only 11 years old when she got married to Rabindranath. So the marriages were held at very young age in those days, and Rabindranath was not an exception. Mrinalini happened to be was not literate at the time of her marriage, but she picked up very fast, and she became a good literature in her own right. So then soon after that, so his mother had died when he was 13 years old, but 3 months after Rabindranath's marriage, his sister-in-law, to whom he was so attached, committed suicide. So this was a devastating blow. And Rabindranath really never really pulled himself out of this very difficult blow, this very difficult situation. Rabindranath and Mrinalini had 5 children, 3 daughters and 2 sons. So in 1902, Rabindranath's wife died after 20 years of marriage. So basically, he had no permanent or even long-lasting, nothing is permanent, of course, even long-lasting a source of female affection in his entire life. Okay, his mother died, his sister-in-law, to whom he was very attached, died, and then his wife died, after 20 years of marriage. So this was a very sad period for Rabindranath. And then to top it all, on 19 January 1905, his father died. And in November 1907, a young son of Rabindranath Tagore died. So you can imagine the extent of tragedy in this man's life. His life was a litany of tragedies, one catastrophe after another, at least at a family and at an emotional level. So Rabindranath Tagore's life was full of tragedy, and he had very few spells of feminine support and affection, be they from his mother, his sister-in-law, or his wife. Yet he never had any complaints. You will not find any poem of Rabindranath which Rabindranath Tagore, where he complains about his situation. He never complained about his situation. His personal tragedy was elevated to the level of love for humanity at large and by implication for Brahma. Rabindranath Tagore was a member of the Brahmo Samaj, which many of you may be familiar with, and they relate to a universal concept of divinity, much like Advait philosophy in Sanatan Dharma. And he was able to to transcend first, and then elevate his personal tragedies to the level of love for humanity and for Brahm. So we'll come back to the political aspect of, and all this time he was writing furiously. Please keep that in mind. Despite all these tragedies, he was writing huge amounts of material, not just one or two poems here and there, or plays or whatever. So he's after the poem mocking the appointment of Lord Lutyens to the Governor General or Viceroyship of India. In July, the second bout of political poems came out in 1897, when Bal Gangadhar Tilak was arrested and tried by the Bombay High Court. Okay, so this is Bal Gangadhar Tilak. All of you must be familiar with that name. He was part of the famous Garam Dal trio, Lal Bal Pal, meaning Lala Lajpat Rai, Bal Gangadhar Tilak, and Bipin Chandra Pal, who were all very famous and very dedicated freedom fighters in their time. Tagore's pen became even more active and began rising to defend Tilak and instill a deep sense of remorse and anger among the people against the unjustified arrest of Bal Gangadhar Tilak. So soon after the death of his father, in 1905, the partition of Bengal took place, and partition of Bengal was the problem with the partition of Bengal was, of course, that it was done along communal lines. So so the plan was to divide the Hindu majority regions of West Bengal, Bihar, and Odisha from the Muslim dominated areas of Assam and Sylhet. So this partition of Bengal led to a great uprising in the entire area. Both Hindus and Muslims participated very vehemently in the struggle to annul that partition. There was a lot of violence, and many people. There were many casualties in the violence. The British government passed the orders of partition in August 1905, but soon after that, the festival of Raksha Bandhan was to be observed. So Rabindranath Tagore very cleverly used the festival of Raksha Bandhan as a medium to protest against Britain's partition policy by showing a picture of unity among the two communities. So what he did was he encouraged everybody to tie Rakhi on the wrists of every other person. So and the Rakhi that we celebrate every year at that time became a symbol of unity for Bengal and for the people of Bengal. So this was a very clever and very effective effective tool to combat this evil of partition that had occurred, and this worked to some extent. Because the partition was annulled in 1911, but the harm had already been done. The poisonous seeds of separation had already been laid, and then the Muslim League was born soon after that. The Rabindranath composed the famous poem Amar Sonar Bangla, which is now the official national anthem of Bangladesh. So he is credited. He's perhaps the only person in the world who has written the national anthems of two countries, India and Bangladesh. So this is a remarkable achievement. Remarkable achievement from his side, and of course, our national anthem Jana Gana Man was composed in 1911 and was first delivered at the 1911 meeting of the Congress Party, and it was adopted as India's national anthem. But nevertheless, the seeds of partition had been laid by dividing the population according to communal lines, and therefore this ultimately led to the huge amount of violence that occurred during 46-47, during the partition of the eastern region of the country between India and East Pakistan. Lord Curzon, during whose time this terrible decision had been made, unfortunately for us, Lord Curzon, they had a road named after him in Delhi. One of the arterial roads of Connaught Place used to be called Curzon Road. Fortunately, its name has finally been changed, and it is now called Kasturba Gandhi Marg. What Curzon did in response to the riots in Bengal was to start a university in Dhaka. The University of Dhaka was born around the same time. So this resonates with the idea of founding the Mohammedan Anglo-Oriental College in 1875 with the collaboration of Sir Syed Ahmad and the British rulers. This college later became the Aligarh Muslim University in India. The Swadeshi and boycott movements in the national struggles started as a result of the partition of Bengal. Rabindranath supported these movements though he had some differences with Mahatma Gandhi in some of the nuances of the freedom struggle. But he and Gandhi had a shared lifelong love and affection, very deep lifelong love and affection, of the type that is very rare to be seen these days. So the Muslim League was born in 1906, as we know, as a result of the partition of Bengal, and then the rest followed. So the partition was annulled in 1911. New provinces were then created based on linguistic lines, a practice which we followed even after independence. So the first partition was according to communal lines, then it became linguistic basis for partitioning the country. So the states of Bihar and Orissa were carved out of Bengal in 1936. A separate Assam province was also created, and the capital of British India was moved to Delhi from Calcutta in 1911. Now let's look at a little bit about, let's look at the at some of the work of Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore. Okay, the first thing to note is that there is hardly a field of art which Gurudev did not enrich. And he also fulfilled the duty of an artist to be socially responsible and to work for the upliftment of society, as he showed over and over again with his contribution to the freedom struggle. What area of art did he not contribute? Let me give you some examples. Poetry, novels, short stories, plays flowed from his pen in their hundreds, if not thousands, probably thousands, many thousands. At an advanced stage, he took up painting and insisted on a strong dance curriculum in his Shanti Niketan, later Vishwa Bharati. He also composed more than 20,000 songs, which later came to be known as Rabindra Sangeet. And he composed more than 7,000 such tunes after the age of 70. Can you believe that? After the age of 70. This gives hope for retired people like me. We can continue to do good work even after retirement. And he himself composed 20 rags and raginiyas. This was a giant of a very difficult to say anything to compare Rabindranath Tagore with literally anybody. Literally anybody. They have been famous poets. They have been famous poets. They have been famous novelists. They have been famous playwrights. So on and so on and so on and so forth. But somebody who has all of these in one human frame, it is simply remarkable. Absolutely remarkable. I for one cannot find anybody who will compare with him. Was truly peerless in the area of art. His most famous work, Gitanjali, Song Offerings, is a collection of poems published in India in 1910. Tagore then translated it into 103 prose poems in English, and it was published in 1912 in England with an introduction by William Butler Yeats. Gitanjali is in a class by itself. Tagore was a Brahm Samaji and had intense devotion to Brahma. He expressed this devotion in an unparalleled way in Gitanjali, absolutely unparalleled way in Gitanjali. Brahma was to Gurudev, as Lord Ram was to Tulsidas, and Lord Krishna was to Surdas, Brahma was to Gurudev. It was that category of devotion and love that was expressed in the Gitanjali. No word no praise is too much for the work for Gitanjali and some of the other works of Rabindranath Tagore. Many Western scholars like Yeats and George Bernard Shaw were completely overwhelmed by the devotion and depth of Gitanjali. They were completely overwhelmed. And they said as much in many writings. There have been many great literatures in this world, but I find it very hard to think of anyone who had the scale and depth of Gurudev's artistic activity. He contributed to philosophy, music, art, poetry, song, theater, painting. There was simply no one like him, simply no one like him. And then he busted, for us intellectuals, people who believe in intellectual activity, he busted 3 myths, very important, 3 myths he busted. The first myth he busted was quality versus quantity. We heard this argument over and over again. If you produce too much, your quality will go down. All right? If you produce too much artistic work or if you produce too much mathematics or whatever, the quality of your work will go out. You produce too much economics, your economic work will go down. But here is a man who's produced thousands and thousands and thousands of pieces of artistic work, and the quality of each one of them is superb. So where is the quality versus quantity conflict that many intellectuals talk about? A second myth that he busted was Nishkam Karm means good quality work does not come out. So many people I have spoken to some people about, and they say, well, Nishkam Karm is fine, but you don't get motivated to do good work if you are doing Nishkam Karm. You have to have a self-interest. Rabindranath Tagore had no self-interest ever in his life. And which Sakam Karmi, which person who actually works with self-interest can produce anything of the quality remotely like Rabindranath Tagore's work? So it is a myth to say the Nishkam Karm is not, that means that you will not produce high quality work. And the third myth that he busted was one cannot be recognized unless he/she writes in the dominant language, that is English. He wrote in Bangla all his life. And he busted that, and not now when Indian languages are experiencing some kind of renaissance. But he did this when India was a colonized country. He attained all this fame when India was a colonized country. Indians were looked down upon. They were considered not at par with the colonizing power and other European powers. Even then, he attained international glory, not just in England, but in many, many parts of Europe, in Africa, in various places, without writing anything in English, except for translating the Gitanjali and a few other things. So he was the first Asian to get a Nobel Prize in 1913 in literature, that also from a colonized country. And in my honest view, I think the Nobel Prize was enriched itself by giving this prize to Nobel Committee, enriched itself by giving this prize to Rabindranath Tagore. He was given top national awards by many countries, and he traveled the world to preach his message of universal humanism. He also gave up a key award, that of knighthood, in response to the massacre of innocent Indians in Jallianwala Bagh on 13 April 1919. Throughout, he remained dedicated to his ideals of ensuring India's emancipation and attainment of her former spiritual glory, as well as Shanti Niketan. And this is also corroborated by the fact that one of his close associates in Shanti Niketan, later Vishwabharati, was the great saint Maharshi Aurobindo. Maharshi Aurobindo, the kind of spiritual thinking and spiritual writing that he has done in the Life Divine is unparalleled. So he was very close to Rabindranath Tagore as well. So now I think I should probably try to wind up. So I would like to just end up with the same poem that the Deputy High Commissioner recited a few minutes ago. This is a message for Indians, but more broadly for humanity as at large, where the mind is without fear and the head is held high, where knowledge is free, where the world has not been broken up into fragments by narrow domestic walls, where words come out from the depth of truth, where tireless striving stretches its arm towards perfection, where the clear stream of reason has not lost its way into the dreary desert sands of dead habit, where the mind is led forward by thee into ever, thee meaning God or Brahma, into ever widening thought and action, into that heaven of freedom, my Father, let my country awake. Sincerely wish India reaches that state envisaged by Gurudev. Rabindranath Tagore left his mortal body on 7th August 1941. He just lived slightly above 80 years. However, well before that, he would say, this is a very nice quote from him. This is translated into Hindi. असंख्य बंधनों के मध्य में मैं महामाय मुक्ति का स्वाद चखूंगा. In the midst of countless bondages, I will taste the eternal liberation. There can be no doubt that this saint, this sage attained moksha, but his legacy will continue to inspire generations. I think we have much to learn even now about the greatness or the great work that this man has done and what he has left for us, for the whole of humanity, but particularly for Indians, what he has left behind. We still haven't realized the full depth and the full scope of his work and his thinking. Well, I'll end there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Jha. There could not have been a better way of observing the birth anniversary of Gurudev than by listening to you speak about his work based upon thorough reading that you might have done during the past 10 days since we requested you to deliver a talk on this. What you talked about Gurudev regarding he being unparalleled, there are no second thoughts about it. Today, I feel even more proud that I belong to a land where such men were born, who guided the nation through their writings during the times when it would have been really difficult for them under being a colonial power. Thank you, Professor Jha, and I want to thank all the esteemed guests today for joining us. Your presence inspires us, motivates us, encourages us to hold more of such occasions and events where we all can assemble together, remember the great men of our country, carry and learn something new which we can forward down to our future generations. Today, I myself, and I'm sure all other audience must have benefited from this talk, learning something new, something more valuable, which we had not come across earlier. Thank you, Professor Jha. I would request if Suneet would like to add a few lines, our Deputy High Commissioner.
I'll just echo what you've already said, Ruchika. The talk has been extremely enlightening. Thank you, and from the bottom of our heart, Professor Jha, for enlightening us with such valuable research and details about his life. So thank you so much for your talk. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. It's been wonderful to talk to you. All the best.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Professor Jha, and I thank you all the esteemed guests. I thank for joining us today, and I hope we'll continue to meet on our future events. Thank you, everyone. A very good night.
Good night. Bye-bye.